worried that you might be the cool kid? You wear the latest fashions on top of all the trends. Or have you ever worried you were too much in the mainstream? Always so generic, more normal than your friends. Well, we've devised a test to put to rest your fears. There's no need to panic if you lend us your ears. Tonight you can sleep easy after all that you've heard. Cause if you like the show, then you're probably a nerd. Oh, Canon, it's all.
Hey everybody, how you doing? It is Thursday, and that means we're coming at you with another episode of the It's Canon podcast, the podcast where we talk about everything pop culture, everything social media, everything Lego, everything Star Wars, everything comics, everything comic books. Well, they are comics. Hey, anyhow, we're going to be talking to you about a lot of stuff this week. I'm joined by my co-host, Tyler.
Hey-o! It's also worth noting, I gotta say, that we don't have a winner to announce this week. Boris has that, and he got called out at the 11th hour due to an emergency. This isn't us ducking out of it, it's just pushing it back a week. We're not extending entries. I just didn't want anyone to listen to this and be like, but my opera entry!
Right?
Yeah.
We've already let the date slide, but yes, the emails are in. We haven't been predisposed to them. And like Tyler was mentioning, Boris got pulled away on a personal matter. So we have blown the dust off of the microphones and put our host and co-hosting hats on to bring this week's episode. But hey, first things first, what have you been up to, Tyler?
All I do now is renovate my house and play Deathloop.
Oh, Deathloop. Oh my.
That's like I literally have everything solved. I know how to finish the game. And it's merely a matter of I am at this point now. What do you know about? Do you know much about Deathloop?
I don't know a lot. I know that it's well reviewed.
Okay.
I know that it probably isn't my type of game. I know that there's a lot of high praise for it.
Did you ever play Dishonored or Prey?
Yes.
If you liked either of those, this is your kind of game.
I got probably 20 minutes in each of those games and never touched them again.
Then it's not for you.
Exactly.
That's fine. It's just it's very much the people who made those games made this, and this is their like, oh, they're getting better.
Yeah.
One of the mechanics of the game is that there are only two people who are aware of the time loop. The main character and a woman named Juliana.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the multiplayer component, is other players can play Juliana and invade your loop.
Wow.
Because she's trying to kill you. And I've gotten to this point where minimum twice a day, I'm getting Juliana, like day in-game. Not real day, like the in-game days, you have one day that's on a loop. I'm getting at least 2 Juliana attacks.
Oh, wow.
And it's screwing me up. I know what to do, but I haven't really get there yet. As for renovations, I mean, our basement's going to be ballin' by the end of November, but it's just we're in that state now of I'm just like, I pulled out all of the ducting from our house.
Oh my goodness.
We're getting off of forced air. We're going to baseboards and like,
wow.
We ran some back the napkin math, and we are going to functionally double the livable area of our house.
Wow. Good for you guys.
That's how much of the basement was just like, you lost so much to ducting and poor design and this and that. So,
wow. That's crazy. Good for you guys, though. That's really awesome.
How about yourself?
Oh my goodness. The one nice feature that I like about Xbox is that it passive aggressively pits you against your friends list for achievements on the month. So you can go to your friends tab and you can see which ranking you're in on the month. And most of my friends now on that list, because it's probably one of the longest playing consoles I have in terms of the continuous support.
Yeah.
In the OS and everything. Um, most of those people are knowingly or unknowingly in a massive race with me as I race myself to get the highest gamer score I can per month and finish number one. So it's gotten to the point now where I'm like hitting Game Pass and just grabbing everything and anything and playing it. So I played Edith Finch this week,
Oh yeah.
which was a walking game by Anna Pure. And I've got to say, that was a great game. I
I've heard
ended
it's
up
good.
enjoying that way more than I should have. It was a great narrative driven. It's old, but it's great narrative driven, interesting, and touching end. It really like moved me a little bit. So I was happy with that. But on top of that, I'm just hitting like everything right now and just playing it and trying out everything I can off
Good
of
for you.
these indie titles and whatnot. And it's never been something that I've dove into before. So when we were talking about the stuff with Prey and whatnot, the only reason why I abandoned those games is the complexity factor was pretty hard up front and Dishonored as well, which I didn't adopt well to that curve.
Fair.
And especially with Prey, it started to feel more horror based, and that doesn't
Yes.
always vibe well with me.
That's
Now
fair.
it's the right combination of horror with sci-fi, but
Yeah.
there was this creep out point for me that I was like, okay, I want to explore this world, but I'm hitting the wall.
Yeah. I mean, I remember to play through Prey personally. I was interested by the story, but I wasn't having as much fun bashing my head against the game at higher difficulties. So
Right.
I did crank the difficulty down on that one to get through it.
Oh, interesting. And like you've played Returnal, so
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was not that I had it. I found it like too hard. It's that for how hard it was, I wasn't having fun.
yeah,
Um,
I can appreciate that.
and I think 100% part of it was like some of the cool powers and stuff. The game is a little bit stingy up front within Prey,
Mm.
and I think that's what it was. I didn't have any of the cool stuff yet, so I wasn't having fun. And then I just you get you put it into easier difficulty, then you just don't turn it off the easier difficulty.
Right. I was on the easiest, and I
Yeah.
was like, "What the hell?" I did finish this week, The Artful Escape,
Oh yeah.
and I again quite enjoyed that game. Um, it was one of these, similar to the Edith Finch thing. It's a walking game by the same company, a walking around like the same distributor, put it that way. Walking around game and whatnot, and music and a story. But I feel compelled with this type of game for some reason because I feel like it's a way to tell a story in a medium that's a little bit different than watching Netflix
Yeah.
and whatnot. I'm engaged. I'm interacting. It's side scrolling or it's walkabout, that type of thing. Definitely with games like Prey and Deathloop and whatnot, it's more first person shooter,
Yes.
and they have their times and places too, don't they?
Mhm.
And I guess we're coming up on it is getting to be officially nutty season on the video game front, in the sense that Battlefield, I think, was pushed by a little bit this week, the new Battlefield game, but it's still coming out this year. I think it got pushed a week or something to beginning of November. But we've got Forza Horizon 5, we've got Halo Infinite coming out in December. Forza Horizon coming out at the beginning of November. Depending on which version you release, you get early access. There's a lot of big video games, Call of Duty, the perennial time of year. The new FIFA is out, FIFA 22. We're seeing a lot of stuff like that. And I know we haven't touched on it in a while, but I'll bring it up anecdotally here. The box office seems to be saying, well, COVID be damned,
Mhm.
with the numbers that are coming in with Shang-Chi, which I know you saw and we never actually talked about. And as well, I guess, what was this week's new Marvel movie?
Technically, Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage.
Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. Yeah. Like these box office numbers are pretty good. It was $90
Yeah, they're getting
million.
back to where people were hoping to be.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
I'm surprised that the appetite is there so soon, but
I mean,
guess
I know people who are already traveling internationally and shit again. I have a guy who's been going to concerts like internationally for 6 months now. And I'm like,
wow.
if this person gets COVID, I will not be surprised.
Well, it's a risk, right? Like,
Yeah.
even with all this vaccination and whatnot, it's a tough thing.
Speaking of vaccinations and risk and people maybe not knowing much about reality, we got two big news topics today.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk first about Facebook going down for 6 hours earlier this week.
Did you try to use Facebook this weekend? This is the funny thing, folks. We use a Facebook chat group to talk.
Yeah.
And I realized I have no way to communicate with Tyler.
Discord.
Yeah, but then I thought Discord, like there is a way. But it was just funny because I'm like, oh, I'll just hit up WhatsApp. Oh, crap. That's why my friends on WhatsApp aren't responding.
Yeah.
And then increasingly, Instagram's becoming this message hub. And that's not up because they're all owned by Facebook. Right? Like we're talking about a pretty big component of their back room server stuff got taken out to take down all three platforms, which made for a crazy Monday. Like it was probably my most productive Monday ever, and I loathe Facebook. So, how did you find that outage, Tyler?
I mean, I was renovating.
Yeah.
You know what it was? I just didn't get anyone messaging me for a while I was renovating.
That's hilarious. Yeah, so it's interesting to see because I think collectively as a group, we all realized how much this application or set of applications actually occupies our daily attention,
Mhm.
right? Like their absence was definitely noticeable, and even on a low usage user like myself. So I can only imagine people and businesses that rely on this, because I know that there's a trend in the tech industry, and it's not necessarily with the big companies, but it is on the smaller scale companies where they've abandoned a lot of communication infrastructure over the years and started relying on things like WhatsApp, which have a desktop element as well as a mobile phone element, and the two are compatible. So I can only imagine how much this actually cost directly or indirectly to people, right? As far as that goes. So
Byron agrees.
yeah, exactly.
Byron is not loving the monopoly that Facebook has.
Yeah,
It's
and then people immediately like watching CNN. I flipped CNN on. Watching CNN, they were almost immediately, and CBC were almost immediately saying, is there some link between the 60 Minutes interview that happened Sunday night with the whistleblower? Is this coincidence that Facebook is down the next day?
I think so.
You think so? You think
think
that
so.
they intentionally pulled an outage?
No, I mean, to what end, right? Like Facebook had a 5% drop in their market value that it hasn't rebounded from, and this has actually led to more coverage on Facebook's problems. One of the issues I've harped on before for anyone is, if you are dependent upon any of these online platforms to make your money, and they go away or they all of a sudden change the deal with you, like it sucks, but that's what's going to happen. And I mean, I don't think that. I mean, it's a publicly traded company, even though Mark Zuckerberg is the majority shareholder. I don't think that it's one of those situations where I think it's easier to assume idiocy than malice.
Yeah.
They
They seem to insinuate on these, especially on CNN at the time,
I mean,
that
CNN.
that possibly, like, they were keeping their distance on it, and as we all should, right? Like, it's speculation, but they were just like, is there a relationship between this whistleblower thing and the outage? I
I
don't
mean,
think there is, other than, you know, it was a poorly timed event that happened with the back room or with the
yeah.
backbone. It definitely made it worse, if anything, because like you say, now we're talking about it more, right? Like, as well, we also had this whistleblower go in front of Congress on
Yeah.
Tuesday.
And further, I mean, I don't think that you would go down and then have Mark Zuckerberg come back yesterday, 2 days ago, after that, to say, like, to give the statement he did, which I thought was very milk toast. And, you
What
know,
did he say? Can you paraphrase it?
I mean, his paraphrase was his paraphrase was to literally lie or admit he doesn't know half the internal stuff his company's doing.
Right.
So, one of the focuses of the hearing was on an internal report, like a
Mhm.
report Facebook did the research and generated for their own stuff that showed a negative impact on the mental health of Instagram users that are teenagers,
Yep.
particularly teenage girls. And, you know, it's long been the criticism of Facebook, right? That angry people are engaged and that they sell ads.
Yep.
Um, and Mark Zuckerberg was like, "This makes no sense. This is." He said, "I don't know any tech company that says such build products that make people angry or depressed. The moral, business, and product incentives all point in the opposite direction." Which, again, first of all,
Ugh.
is contrary to, like, he's not responding to the evidence that's in place before him, and he's not responding to this growing criticism that I think is getting some increasing play, and I think rightfully it should, that Mark Zuckerberg in many ways acts like Facebook is more like a shadow government than a corporation.
Oh, that's a goal of theirs, isn't it?
I
To
mean,
be its own independent nation or something like that? Like,
I
it's he's stated this stuff in the past, like, to have some autonomy.
he has I mean, yes, I think that's true. He has he has danced around it and said it a lot of it in the way of like we couldn't say he definitely meant it because he could have been
Mm,
joking, you know. But his entire thing is the typical Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, if you've seen Mark Zuckerberg ever respond to any of this criticism, it's the exact same. Of
oh, yeah.
like he does this faux hand wringing of like I too am very concerned. I am concerned with the rising radicalization, and it's like okay, but how do you respond to the report that your company defends radicals on only one side of the political spectrum?
Yeah.
And he's
Well,
like, I am very concerned about this, and it's very important we hear people's voices, and social issues are very
yeah.
important. And we got to talk. It's just like you don't. He
You're not
just yeah.
answering the question, you're doing the political sidestep, right? Like, you're addressing the concern on a much different level than the question's engaging, because the question's being precise. And in
He
this, situation,
Mhm,
the precision is based off of, if let's say you're on Instagram, all right, as a teenage person, it doesn't matter, boy or girl, and you see a weight loss ad,
mhm.
and then you click on that weight loss ad. Like, I gotta tell you, folks, Instagram is tricky. Like, there are times I see
God.
product placements that are ads and I touch them, and then it brings me to a place where I can purchase it. And I gotta say, sometimes I do, if it's the
Mhm.
right product, if the algorithm is dialed. All right.
So
But let's say a kid sees a weight loss ad, clicks on it, and now they're inundated with weight loss ads.
well, I
Now
mean,
the
yes.
algorithm starts targeting their insecurity.
Like, not even that. I mean, the other side of it being the tendency for the algorithm to like. There are academic papers out there that show that the algorithm specifically benefits conspiratorial worldviews,
Yes.
and there is an ecosystem that I even hesitate to say is I find it weird to call it right wing because it is I think largely nihilistic of these people who are just like they want to burn it all down, and the QAnon people, like I don't even think they're right wing anymore. I think they're just I don't even know. I mean, he has all these defenses of like we have more people policing our content than any tech company, including the ones larger than us.
Yeah.
Hey Phil, what company that's a
It's
tech company generates more user content than Facebook?
I honestly can't, like, maybe, like, I don't even think it holds a candlestick to Facebook, but the only one that isn't Facebook that generates that type of content would be maybe Twitter.
Oh,
And I don't think,
Twitter is not even the top 10, my friend.
my goodness.
Facebook's comparing itself to Amazon and
Okay,
Apple.
I was gonna
And it's
say
like
Amazon
that
and
is
Apple.
not the same. They're
Yeah,
not social media.
that's not, like, I'm taking the question that you're giving me literally about user-generated content. I guess with Amazon, it's reviews maybe that gets that classification, and the same with Apple, like people
Sure.
reviewing stuff. But that's
Sure,
not.
but
I don't review my experience with an Amazon product and say, "Oh, I really didn't like the mouse I ordered. Oh, and I'm a flat earther." You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna declare something personally. I'm not. Okay,
or you
just so we're clear.
or you are, and no one's gonna see it, right? Like part of it
Yeah.
is who's gonna see it.
Yeah, because there's no, like, the algorithms that are employed by Amazon and whatnot, at least from the cursory glancing that I've done, are mostly regional based. Here are
Yeah.
other people from Canada who reviewed this product.
Yeah.
Like, that's as zeroed in as it gets.
Yeah.
And the government is now talking about the fact that, okay, whistleblower comes and she basically deliberately put this out there,
Yeah.
where she said, when we found out tobacco companies were lying and they knew tobacco was bad, and yet they were still selling it, we regulated the industry. When we found out that seatbelt saves lives, we regulated the industry so seatbelts became mandatory. And she's basically saying, I'm coming forward with all of these documents and this proof that internally generated documents. So even for Mark Zuckerberg to say, I'm the CEO, I don't control everything, which to a point I can agree. But if
Here's
you're
my position.
generating a report that
Yeah.
specifically outlines harm to other human beings,
Mhm.
you're either negligent at your job or lying, right?
And
Like,
that's
if you're
yeah.
not involved in the fact that your customers are dying, but your ad revenue is increasing,
Yeah.
like, that's a fundamental moral disconnect.
I agree. And I think that a big part of it, is this weird position that these CEOs try to play of like, I should have more money than any human has ever had accounting for inflation. There are
Yeah.
these billionaires now functionally have more power than any ruler of any ancient kingdom.
Yeah.
Like Facebook has just shy of 3 billion users.
Half
So
the
like a
world.
third of the planet. And WhatsApp has another 2 billion. Instagram another 1.
Yeah.
The only like do you know what the only company not in the top 5? That's like the only social media platform not in the top 5? In the top 5 that's not Google. Oh my god.
That's not
Having
Facebook.
difficulty with this one. That's not Facebook, is YouTube.
Google to the
And
rescue.
think about YouTube. Like, and YouTube is also having this exact same problem of like,
Oh yeah, like, I literally in both Twitter and YouTube, I don't use Facebook anymore other than our little chat. I literally keep away from anything that's anti-vax or anything that's conspiratorial because I don't want the algorithm hitting me.
yeah,
I only, like, seriously, a lot of the YouTubers that I watch are really dialed into this stuff. Like Lou Later, Unbox Therapy, he's a local guy. And he goes on and on. He says, don't use the homepage to navigate YouTube. Go to your subscription page to navigate your subscriptions. Because otherwise, you're playing right into the algorithm. You're already playing into the algorithm. But the
so
minute you go to that homepage, you're getting suggested content. You're not getting what the content is that you want to watch.
so on that exact point, That's actually one of Frances Haugen, who is the whistleblower. That's one of her recommendations. One of her recommendations is basically no algorithms.
Yeah.
It's chronological.
Yeah. That's like they want to be able to one of the things that I heard summarized out of all of this disclosure was the idea that the government, if there was an algorithm being used, that the government could dial the settings. The ultimate decision about what the settings are up to a regulatory committee, not up to Facebook. So they're saying if you're skewing to a negative or dangerous place for the audience, for the users, right? If you're skewing towards that, then it has to be unskewed. It has to go to a more morally neutral or positive place, regardless of what uh, uh, the effect is on your revenue, your ads, and your revenue.
I mean, I think the bigger thing that we have to go back to, and I feel like keeps getting forgotten as part of this conversation, is Facebook enabled and supported a literal genocide in Myanmar.
Yeah.
Like, if nothing else, we have proof. We have Facebook has already admitted multiple times. Like, this is the two-step Facebook always does. And really all tech does right now, because we have governments that are unwilling to do anything about it. And it's basically like, you're right. When they're confronted with unassailable evidence, they go, you're right, messed up, we should do better.
Yeah.
And then they create a bunch of programs. Like, Mark Zuckerberg does this all the time, where he creates all these oversight programs and he creates all these ethics committees. And people from those committees are like, yeah. And then you get 3 months of like Mark Zuckerberg talks to you. It's very serious and like it's very important. And then like the moment the news cycle forgets about it, all your funding gets cut.
Yeah.
And you lose anything. It's like it's very obvious that, you know.
Well, it's hot button issues that get the attention as far as the news cycle goes. Like, heck, how can you not deny the role that they're trying to prove and with real solid evidence, but we can all anecdotally agree the role that Facebook played in the January 6th assault on democracy in the States.
100%.
Like it's happening on their home soil. It's not another country. It's not another it's not away from you. It's happening in your own capital, right? For anybody in the States. But for anybody in North America, like which I would argue North America and Europe probably have the bulk of users because we're talking about, being access to mobile networks or fast internet. But these attacks like are being fueled and done to things that you care about, to things that affect you, and they're still not taking accountability for it. Like, and like you're getting this discussion in Congress about finally legislating it, but you didn't like the January 6th thing didn't cause that discussion.
Well, they don't
You
care.
Like it's just an amazing piece of history right now because that's what it is. And we are in this awkward spot. Tyler and I were talking before the show started. We are in this awkward spot that now all we're reporting on is what we've seen and what we feel, but we don't have much more evidence in terms of the investigations are just getting going who knows how far they go.
Well, I mean, I think part of this and part of the problem is we're having, just to, I think, hopefully wrap this up a little bit, is that none of this is new, right? Like, if you look back to 2016, Facebook was found in a 2017 report by NBC that Facebook preferences conservative groups. Breitbart News was made a respected news partner. Like, Breitbart News is it's not real reporting.
It's not real, yeah. And
Which has been around for 40 years and 100% is political bias. I'm not going to deny that. And I think that it's worthy of criticizing them when they misstep, but like they have a long history of legitimate investigative reporting. And there's a difference between, having your bias as a journalist versus making things up.
Yeah.
And I feel like Mother Jones, to their credit, wears it on their sleeve of like, look, we're left of center. We have some underlying views. And that's what a responsible journalist does. But
I-
Facebook has in 2017, in 2016, in 2018, in 2020, we keep proving that if you're a conservative on Facebook, despite all of this yelling, you have an advantage over the left.
Yep. Oh
And-
yeah, it definitely skews right. Like that's undoubtable. Not in doubt at all. And it's great that there's proof, like some documented proof or evidence. But you just look at what happened in the election in the States, right? The
Yeah.
one that got Donald Trump there. There's entire documentary films based around the fact that third-party companies were using Facebook data to completely manipulate voters. Like
Yep.
that's what all this Cambridge Analytics and all of these companies really got in some hot water. And again, they did the same thing that you're talking about as a tech company. Oh, it was our bad. And then they just kind of disappear, right? And then all those people go and start up new companies that hook into the same data. And there's no investigative response about, and this gets to my final point with all this.
Yeah.
It just seems like there's no way to actually regulate it because the governments and the regulatory, like the government that controls the regulatory body over this in its jurisdiction, has no interest in understanding technology.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean,
They're just completely absent, and that's been my complaint on this show and in real life, like all the time, is that it's going to take them 40 years to get up to date on how the world works now. And we're going to be 40 years ahead because technology moves too fast for them. Right? Like they need to actually take something serious at some point and stop talking about doing it one day.
well, I mean, I think part of the issue to plug into that with what you're saying is, in Canada and the United States and in Britain, which are three of the main markets for any of this, there is at least one political party in each of these countries that is very fine with Facebook with a right wing bias and with this
Yeah.
level of anger and incitement, and that makes it very hard to regulate it when one of your major political parties is fighting back that vociferously against it.
Yeah, that's a good
And then you
point.
look at your China, your Russia, where Facebook, just plays ball. Facebook loves to play ball with a dictatorship of one form or another.
Oh yeah. It's only one person or one body to answer to, right?
Yep.
Like that's the thing. That's the kind of division they like. But we didn't even talk about the idea of this leads into probably an antitrust action.
Well,
Like Facebook, not only we're talking about the moral dilemmas and whatnot, Facebook has too much control over stuff now. Like all of these apps together, right? Like you have to start looking at the fact that when's America going to wake up? I know Europe are trying to do it on all these fronts, but going to have that Microsoft moment from the late 90s, and say you've got a monopoly here. Like this is too much. You can't keep, you know, obtaining everything. I believe that there's been some recent articles or recent reporting saying that the acquisition of Instagram actually probably violated it the most, where they're starting to retrospectively investigate this and say, oh, there was a lot of balls dropped on this
oh yeah, well, I
acquisition.
mean, we've talked before about the failure of antitrust over the last 2 decades,
Mhm.
combined with part of why Obama won was Facebook, and it was good ground game in social media in his first. I'm talking about his first election, right?
Yeah.
And it would look in bad taste for him to go back, and he was he was at the time, the cool tech young president,
Mm-hmm.
and then, Trump got elected with it.
Yeah. Well, I know everybody's leveraging it that way, but it's just amazing to see the political skews that go into it with each government, regardless of side. Yeah, it's a very powerful tool, man. Like we just have to look at all the anti-vaccine stuff right now, right? Like that's the majority of that misinformation is populating and coming off of Facebook. Like, I watched the premier of Saskatchewan today seriously issue a press conference where he had to tell people that the current state of emergency issued by the government is not a conspiracy to grab your cattle. Like, this is what adults are typing on the internet and choosing to believe, and taking horse dewormer to fight COVID.
Yep.
Like, it's Joe Rogan times, everybody. Oh my goodness.
On that,
Yes.
Joe Rogan times, let's transition to another big story, which is the Twitch leak this week.
Yeah. This
Quick recap for those who somehow missed this is there was a massive leak of gigabytes upon gigabytes of data, which Twitch has confirmed is authentic.
Yep.
Released basically the money that most people are making on Twitch.
most streamers, the top performing,
Yes.
supposedly.
And this
Of
has brought
which
up a number
only
of questions.
3% are female, which is scary.
Well, also, like, all of them are white.
Oh, jeez.
But I mean, if we look at like the top one is Critical Role at $9.6 million to date. Which
Is he the one making 400 grand a month?
they make $385.
Oh, Jesus.
$385,000. It's worth noting that Critical Role is a large team and is a large project at this point. And from my understanding, everyone's paid. So what Critical Role is, for those who don't know, is it's a group of voice actors and actors who play Dungeons and Dragons online, and they stream it. And it has gone on to, Phil's wearing his D&D shirt. It's gone on to spin off, and they have comics now, and their own books, and their own this, that, and the other.
I'm not offended by that, Ben. I didn't even know who they were because I don't typically watch streamers, but them working as a team and having an identity doesn't bother me as much on that pay scale.
Well, I mean, and this is where you start to get into it. It's a team, but it does not appear to be a team of equals.
Yeah, but they're all agreeing to that. Like, I get it. I go to work, I get paid. I'm happy with what I get paid. The next guy comes in, maybe gets paid more. You know what I mean? Like, if anything, a leak like this exposes the fact that maybe there's a discrepancy when they say we only get $30 a month, so you better be happy with your 5 cents.
Sure. So it's, first of all, this is noting that this is not including other stuff that can be bought for them, right?
Right.
So this
well,
is
other
just from
other stream revenues. Yeah.
Yeah. Other stream revenues can come in. They are a whole property, and it's worth noting that Matt Mercer kind of screwed over Green Ronin Publishing. This was a story I did some light reporting on years ago, where he did the first Tal'Drai book, first Critical Role Dungeons and Dragons book, when it was a much smaller thing. Critical Role is a smaller thing, that is. They partnered with Green Ronin, who is I believe, a Canadian company that, amongst other things, does Dungeons and Dragons products. And they did one book. Sales were pretty good. And then all of a sudden, it was a 2 or a 3 book deal. The facts aren't in front of me. But all of a sudden, Matt Mercer and other people involved, they kind of dragged their feet on it. And the second and third books never came out. And then the month after their contract ended, they announced that they had a book almost done and ready for publication with D&D, like with Wizards of the Coast. Which is 100% one of those positions of, and I interviewed the Green Ronin people, and they didn't say anything to this extent, so no one go on them, but it looks very much like this is one of those instances where, Matt Mercer had a contract, and probably had a contract that he kind of looked at it and he was like, Critical Role's drawn faster than these guys are. And I don't have to, if I break this contract, they can't afford to sue me.
Yeah.
And Green Ronin never sued. And that Tal'Drai book is now out of print. And I think it looks really sketchy.
Yeah.
And
does.
This also brings up, if you look at a lot of the people involved, a lot of these people are Let's Players who play video games online. And it's brought up people who are talking about the weird conversation around this. So Critical Role makes about $300,000 a month across multiple people.
Right. And multiple revenue
300,000.
streams. So there could be above that.
Yes, $300,000 a month is more than every RPG company except for 2 or 3 are making.
Right.
And it's worth noting that there are these weird instances that come out. One of the interviews and stuff I looked into about it was, if you remember from a few years ago, there was a game that came out called That Dragon Cancer.
Okay.
And it was streamed millions upon millions upon millions of times on YouTube. And the guy who made it is made by Numinous Games. And they've talked about how multiple streamers who streamed their game and streamed the entire story on YouTube made more money off their game than they did.
Yep. Well, heck, even with this Twitch leak, right? I told you what someone I follow on Twitter, who's a developer for ex-developer for Epic,
Yeah.
specifically Gears of War, Cliff Blazinski, was basically like kind of pissed off because he's like, these people make more money streaming my game than we ever did.
Yeah.
Like, and we put our blood, sweat, and tears into this. Like, we put the hard work in. You guys set up a camera, and not to say that it isn't hard work streaming or anything, but come on, man. Like,
So here's my side of it. Is I think a way to look at it is to remember a couple of steps. Number one is, I don't think it makes any sense to shit on the streamers for this.
no,
Because
not at all.
it's a job. Some of them have reported gruelingly hard work. If you
It
look into
can't
some-
be good for your mental health. Like, nothing in that
It's also-
job sounds appealing.
It's also worth noting that there is like this whole swell of what I would call mid-tier streamers who it's their job. Like it's where they make their income, but they're not making millions a year. You know, they're making, probably when you account for expenses and stuff, not much more than you, Phil.
No, I think, yeah, I would agree. Like, they're just earning a lifestyle. Like, they're earning enough to live.
But a lot of them are working 12, 15 hours a day.
Yeah, they're on all the time. It's
Yeah.
not an easy job. And like I say, there's high prices associated with that type of work, right?
Mhm.
Like mental health and whatnot. Like, I can shut my work down, my work laptop,
Yep.
and be like, hey, might as well go for a soda. Like, I can take a break, I can podcast, I can do whatever. But when it's a job, stuff's different. And I know this would be something that Boris and I talk about a lot, and that was in the idea that we ran a fan club for
Yeah.
sports and like a supporters group. And the problem is that I saw inside the sport.
Yep.
And you know how every macho dude would be like, oh, I'd just love for the chance to be inside the Maple Leafs decisions, or whatever your team is, you know, an NFL team, a Major League Baseball team, whatever. You sit there and you go, what kind of life would it be like to be the guy that makes the trade or be part of the team that does this for this fan base? And I got to say, it's not glamorous. It's a business, and you start learning how they treat it like a business. And that's what these streamers are dealing with, right? Because you're looking at ad revenue, clicks per minute, all this stuff. Like, you're getting into the weeds about how you can monetize better and make more money so you can be happier and more comfortable in your life, right? Like, and it's the same with the sports and whatnot. I saw ugly sides of sports. And
But I
I
think
can only imagine, like, this is a little bit of a wake-up call as far as that goes.
Well, and I think that we instead need to criticize the system, right?
Yes.
Of like, Epic is doing this new thing where they're going to make it easier for small and medium-sized streamers to work with their games.
Right.
And the game companies and the developers don't get shit from that.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's worth remembering that
Mm.
none of these streamers have a legal right to do what they're doing.
Right.
Right? We
We've
talked about
talked about this
copyright last
before.
week.
Yeah.
And we talked about before. You know, it's just this weird situation right now where every gaming company has been like, the marketing's worth it.
Yeah,
But
they only see the upside right now, but there's definitely a downside, right? Like at some point, when does this start becoming part of the decision?
yeah, well, and Twitch has started to say like, we're gonna have pay for play for who gets featured and who doesn't.
Yeah.
So
And
you're going to start to see, I think, increasing consolidation, and you're going to start to see similar to what we see on every media, including this happened on YouTube already.
yeah,
Right?
I was going to say this already happened on YouTube, some of these changes. And
Yeah.
even I'm just curious if you know this.
Mhm.
On with Amazon specifically, which Amazon owns Twitch.
Yep.
I think they moved to a stream, like a revenue stream on their Kindle product where people the ebooks, right? Because that's Amazon, right? So
Mhm.
the ebook end of it. So they pay the authors based on how far you read the book.
Yes, that is one of the models you can publish your books in underneath Amazon, where it is, if you're not huge, it's an atrocious model.
Oh yeah.
Because the way it is it's literally uh, all of the money for people who pay for a Kindle Unlimited subscription goes into a pot. Just goes into a pot of money. And Amazon takes out their cut. What is their cut? Shut up. You don't get asked these kind of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tell you what the full pot is, and then they tell you the number of pages you got read, and they give you,
12
I think
cents.
it's like a 10,000th of a penny
Oh,
per page read.
take the 12 cents.
So like when I have books that I used to have in there, my lifetime earnings for all of the stuff like that, it's the pages read under Amazon, was $1.12.
Oh my gosh.
Versus this past month, sorry, not this past month, these past 2 weeks. Nope, we're on the 7th of October. This past week, the first week of October, and it's worth noting, I haven't had a new book out in over 9 months. Right? So like new books are what makes you most money, right? Like books don't
Yeah.
have long tails. But
Right.
I made $90 American this month on books that I did no marketing for and whatever, versus $1.12 lifetime on Amazon. Forget about it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is horrible.
Yeah.
Like these I don't know. I know I come across as anti-corporation when it comes to stuff like this, but my gosh, how are people supposed to live
I mean, I'm
and
anti
live the
mega
dream?
corporation.
Yeah, anti-mega corporation. Yeah, I'll put that title on myself, sure.
Right. I mean,
That's
I have this separate thing of like, I love micro corporation. This is the thing that
right.
British do. For a quick tangent, um, let's say we wanted to incorporate this podcast because we started making some money and we were like, let's be responsible.
Mhm.
Let's be responsible. Let's create a corporation. We'll all take salaries out of the hypothetical money that we're making in this instance.
Yeah, we will declare
Let's say,
our taxes, our
yeah,
earnings.
let's say we made money us doing this.
Mhm.
So in England, that is $49.
Oh wow.
In Ontario, you're at 300, and at $49 is all in. That's
Right.
like corporations have filed, your first years of taxes are done. It's an off-the-shelf corporation. The rules are very simple to get sorted out. In Ontario, in Canada, it starts at $399,
Mhm.
assuming you can write most of the corporate documents yourself, and you have to pay for them separately.
Yeah.
And that's assuming you guess right on your name the first time, because, oh yeah, that's right, we have a bunch of weird naming rules for corporations. So you
Mhm.
can't use certain words.
Yeah.
Did you know you can't use the word royal in a name of a corporation or business in Canada without permission from the Queen of England?
That makes sense due to our linkages there, but that is surprising.
Yeah, well, the issue is to check whether or not your name is allowed if you don't know the rules and if you don't know the clever way. I think it's $29, $39 a search.
Okay, I
Like, it's
gotcha.
not free.
No, oddly enough, Boris and I incorporated our supporters group.
Yeah.
here
It's
in
a good
Canada.
call for liability protection alone.
That was the reason why.
Yep.
and,
Okay,
and the funny thing is that we were fortunate enough to have lawyers in our ranks that did
Oh,
it
yeah.
for free.
Oh, yeah.
So we only had to pay the actual fees, and they did all the writing of the charters and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like they were able to modify our existing standing membership rules and incorporate them into a legal document that was recognized. But it's complicated stuff, people. It's not this England thing sounds pretty cool. Like to just be able to do a micro corporation on the easy
Yeah.
in plain language.
Yeah, basically what it is how it's structured there is you basically go to a lawyer who just specializes in this, and he'll have just dozens of, they're called shelved corporations.
Mhm.
They've already been created, they've already been registered, and they already have a name, but the names are all like numbers and letters.
Right.
Like it'll be like, oh, this is corporation October 10th, 2021 Alpha 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 or whatever. To be like, oh, it was the
Catchy.
first one I registered that day. And then just the first thing you do is you change the name.
Yeah. I wonder if they can use Royal.
I don't think you can in the UK. I think it's even harder in the UK. There's
I wouldn't be
there's
surprised.
like we're gonna get into weird politics. But I think that it's worth remembering. Like there's like the other side of it too, right? Of like fan fiction gets talked about this a lot.
Yes.
Of you have no legal right to make fan fiction.
Yeah.
This is not me shitting on fan fiction people. I don't understand it, but rock on.
Yeah,
But at
I
the
know,
same
right?
time, when J.K. Rowling, as much as I don't love her other stuff she's done, and I think her writing's getting worse, not better, which is impressive. She has a right to tell fan fiction people they can't use her work.
Yeah. No, it's a thing. But the funny thing is though, if you don't embrace it and you take that stance, it doesn't mean it's gonna go away. It's just gonna go underground, right? Like I'm sure
I mean,
there's a lot
underground might be okay for that, right? Because if they're underground, they're not
in your face.
Yeah, it's not. It's harder to find. Not as many people are seeing it, and that might be what you want if you're J.K. Rowling.
Right.
The issue a lot of these smaller video game companies have is that they can't even stop these streams if they wanted to, because there's so many people who are doing it. And one of the defenses I see, and I've seen it, and I saw it in The Economist, which I was really like, really, guys? Is like, oh, but a lot of these people aren't getting paid for it. And it's like, just because you aren't getting paid for it doesn't mean you get to break other laws.
I that is true, because the thing is that I follow a channel on YouTube called Star Wars Theory, or I used to, put it that way. And this guy made a Vader film.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was like, to his credit, it was a damn good film.
Mhm.
It was only about 10 minutes long or whatever, but he poured a lot of his money into it, like a lot of money, a couple $100,000.
Sure.
To get the studio time, the actors, everything like that. He wrote the script, screenplay, and anyhow, Disney actually brought an action against him because he was going to try and monetize to recoup the cost.
What?
And he thought that was okay.
No.
And Disney came in and said no, but they did say, as long as you don't monetize this, you can do it. So
Well,
now he's doing a sequel,
Yeah.
and he's racking up a budget of like $500,000 or $1 million on this thing, and just doing it through crowdfunding. Like, I'm just like scratching my head, like,
how is he crowdfunding? I'm surprised Disney hasn't gotten him on crowdfunding.
well, that's the thing. Like, he's doing it indirectly. He's doing it off of the popularity of his channel. He's you know what I mean? Like, he's doing things in such a way that it doesn't violate the agreement that he has, because obviously they served him with papers.
Mhm.
So he's found this clever way around it. And I can't speak specifically to it. The guy is notoriously shifty on these fronts. But it's just the overall thing. Well, Disney said this is okay, so now all the different, cosplayers can now make a movie, put it on YouTube, and, well, we're not making money.
Well, but
but does that still mean you can do this? Like,
Yeah.
you're
But-
making an Ahsoka movie right now. Like,
yeah. I mean, the other side being of like, all right, so what if they were to? I mean, this is where you get into those instances, right? Of like, if you're playing, Edith Finch, like you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
A full YouTube video of that game.
Yeah.
Probably, like, if that probably cuts down on sales. That directly interferes with the capacity of the developers to make money.
Yeah, the stream. I find that I'm old school in the sense that I used to buy the cheat books for games and then figured out YouTube. And I even looked up to get a couple of the achievements this week. I watched a condensed YouTube video.
Yep.
Right. But I'm just like, this somehow feels weird. I know I've done it a lot too, but I don't know how super legal any of it is because I'm able to hear the same music that's in the game. And I'm pretty sure there's copyright on all this. You know what I mean? Like I did find myself sitting there going, how am I watching this public stream, that anybody can look up? Because I do know I have people in my life that would rather watch Twitch and watch a video game on Twitch. And that's their justification for never buying a console. It's because they can just watch someone else play the game and then they feel like they've played it.
Well, and like to an extent, like sure, but again, I'm not going to shit on the consumer. This probably shouldn't be legal. There should probably be some rule. And I mean, the way I'd love to see it solved would be for, let's get developers and writers to unionize and strike.
Yeah.
Like they are.
Yeah.
We are recording this in the middle of probably I think it's there were more people announced they were going on strike this week than I think like any year in the past 30 or something like that.
Is that in the video game industry or just in general?
Well, there's a huge film one where it's basically the crew, the IATSE is going on strike with like a 90% voter turnout and a 98% support.
Yeah, and I see the news all the time, especially in the video game industry, especially with what's going on at Blizzard, which we've never really fully flushed out or talked about.
Well, the Blizzard one is such a mess because it's like
it's getting worse, right? And there's a real push to get this unionized, and Activision is the same as Amazon. They're union busting, right? And I just don't know how willing any of this is going to be from Amazon's front with this Twitch stuff, right? It's just crazy how they're one of the big players in that would be probably trying to kill any organization because it affects their profits.
I don't mean Amazon people. I mean, I separately think they should unionize. I mean, specifically here, I think what should happen is, developers at, let's say, like, let's stick with Activision Blizzard, should unionize and should be like, we should all, like, we are all engaged in a creative endeavor.
Yeah. Here's the terms, and if you want to stream us.
But none of that. Yeah, they should go to the executives and be like, you need to negotiate better streams. And executives, I think that it would behoove them to go to these big companies and be like, look, our people are not happy and they're going to strike over this. So we're going to take a cut out of your end.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a video on YouTube that is whatever, it's Activision Blizzard. Activision Blizzard video game that's on here, we get, a penny per view or whatever. My number's out of my butt. Like, I don't know if that number would actually work. But basically being like, and then you figured out with the streamer if it makes sense or not.
Yeah. No, in concept, I just worry about these huge these mega corporations like Amazon who owns Twitch.
Yeah.
And owns the internet backbone, like the AWS. And you know what I mean? Like, and same with Google. If they're going to talk about YouTube and they're going to talk about content creators, but then they're controlling the digital world, it's hard to get good faith discussion in that environment, even in a unionized way, right? Like, it's hard to leverage these companies to do the right thing when it's fundamentally doing the right thing might not be in what they perceive as the right thing to do.
Well, I mean, separately, we probably got to break these companies, which is getting back to my previous thing. It's like, we basically got to break these companies.
And part of the data theft that went on now, this is the first disclosure, according to the hackers. There's more coming. All right. And part of the data theft was the source code for Twitch. Yep. Like, we're talking a lot of stuff. Now, I will say this. I'm going to read a press release by Twitch, the newest one that I could find. Tyler will make me look bad because he'll probably say, "Oh, they have a new one that came out
probably not.
2 hours ago."
I don't have this one.
Okay, so we have learned that some data was exposed to the internet due to an error in the Twitch server configuration change that was subsequently accessed by a malicious third party. Our teams are working with urgency to investigate the incident. All right, it goes on to say, as the investigation is ongoing, we are still in the process of understanding the impact in detail. We understand that the situation raises concerns, and we want to address some of those while our investigation continues. That was a horrible paragraph. At this time, we have no indication that login credentials have been exposed. We are continuing to investigate. Additionally, full credit card numbers are not stored by Twitch, so full credit card numbers were not exposed. Now, that's all meant to make us feel good as consumers, but it would behoove me to not put on my tech hat as I work in the IT industry and tell you to go out and change your passwords. All right, especially if you're using a similar password across multiple platforms. I get it. We're humans and we do these types of mistakes, but if you're hooked up to Twitch with your financial information, the Twitch data was, actually stolen, and they understand how it's communicating. So these things are no longer guaranteed confidential in that sense. So if your bank account is hooked up for these deposits, then you really need to start looking at that. And secondly, I would not trust any company, especially this early in an investigation of a breach, to actually have real data on what was taken, because we've seen this with Nintendo and other companies in the past where their initial reaction is nothing was taken. And then once it gets out of the news cycle and they mitigate the actual damage that's going to happen to their stock price, then what starts happening is you get disclosure after disclosure about what was actually taken months later and how bad the data breach actually was. And the companies are not compelled to react at all.
You said it.
So it's garbage, right? Like this, again, back to our theme with Facebook about enforcement and trying to actually get accountability from these companies. Whereas they just do the sidestep, the Zuckerberg sidestep that we talked about, right? Where they're like, well, we're investigating and we're trying to understand, and the investigation continues. That was the whole second paragraph, was 2 sentences back to back about how they're investigating.
Yep.
That's a brutal, brutal thing. I'm sorry. I'm enjoying the fact that a lot of what you've suggested, Tyler, is actually demonstrated clearly in this statement.
Yep.
That's unbelievable. Well, do you have anything to add, Tyler?
No. I think this is where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, everybody, I think it's going to be an interesting couple weeks as far as maybe some of the repercussions from these events. We just wanted to bring you an episode to talk about them and to hype up the fact that we are getting more regular in our programming. We will be anticipating a busy holiday season, both in the video game world, and probably there's some content coming out soon too in the Star Wars universe and other streaming platforms that looks like it was right in our wheelhouse, such as Sandman on Netflix coming up soon, and Cowboy Bebop live action on Netflix. And so stick with us, enjoy the show. I hope you had a good time, and we're always looking for your feedback too. So if you're looking to find us on the internet, you can find us at www.itscanonpodcast.com. You can track us down on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at It's Canon Podcast. You can email us at show@itscanonpodcast.com. You can subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere where you find podcasts, you're going to find the It's Canon Podcast. So be sure that you take the time to subscribe and leave a rate and review if your platform allows it, and tell a friend about our show. We would be more than happy to bring them along. And with that, I'm just going to say it's been a pleasure. Again, Tyler, making an episode with you. It's been a pleasure being with our audience. And you're listening to the It's Canon podcast, the podcast where we talk about pop culture, the podcast where we talk about social media, the podcast where we talk about comic books, geek, Star Wars, Lego. See, I get to choose because I'm the guy on the mic. So I'm just going to say, what's the best part about all of this, Tyler?
It's all in canon.
That's right, baby. Woo!